Shalom. First, I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakawadash. And today, October the 1st, well, it actually started at sundown last night, September 30th. But today, we're in the Day of Atonement. Day of Atonement for your sins. Now, which Yahweh Shai has already died for the sins for the nation of Israel. So technically, we don't have to do the Day of Atonement, but, it doesn't hurt to do it, it's a good time to reflect on spiritual things, prayer, resting, and, no food, no water, nothing like that until sundown this evening. For me in the central time, it'd be like 6:48, I believe. But it doesn't hurt to fast and pray, man. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But like the scriptures say, man, we just rehearsing the righteous acts. We're going to get it totally right in the kingdom of heaven. But let's get this article here. It says, Russian admiral reacts to Hegseth prepare for war remark. Yeah, so Pete Hegseth gave a speech yesterday. He had 800 generals and admirals of the U.S. Armed Forces come to Quantico in Virginia, to hear his speech about how he want to whip the military into shape, what policies are good, what policies are not going to fly anymore. So he's telling all these admirals and generals what the deal is. And one of the key points, he told them to prepare for war. It's the Department of War, and this whole being defensive strategy is no good. So prepare for war. And what war could he be talking about? Is he talking about the main adversary of, the U.S. is Russia, Iran, China, which they're all together. But the main one lately, they've been hyping in the news, is Russia. So maybe the war drums are beating louder for Russia, the Russian Edomites. And it goes to show you, man, we are in World War III. It's been going on for some time now. But eventually we're going to get to the hot phase where these ground troops are going to, clash in the Middle East, in the Levant. But let's go ahead with this article. It says, Russian admiral reacts to Hegseth prepare for war remark. Why would they pick a Russian? Why didn't they pick the so-called Chinese, the so-called Russians, the so-called Iranians to do this interview, to ask them? Because they know the elite, and don't get me wrong, these guys, these Russians, the U.S., they're Masons. This is all one big joke on the masses, so they have to build up this bad guy, good guy, in order for this, war to be pulled off, man. Which, man, the Lord, the elect, we know is really the Most High who's pulling the strings. He's the ultimate puppet master and got these Edomites going at each other. But for on a lower level, for you to understand, for your everyday people who was not given the truth, including our people who weren't given the truth. When I say our people, you so-called Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans, the 2/3 of the nation Israel. You know, we have to tell you that to give you, you know, the easiest way so you can process this. You know, it says a retired Russian admiral has said the country must consider with the utmost seriousness of meeting the U.S. generals this week, in which Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told them to prepare for war. Sergei Ivankov raised the meeting during an appearance on Russian state television program 60 Minutes on Tuesday. Newsweek has contacted the Russian Defense Ministry via email for comment. Why it matters: pundits on Russian state television do not necessarily reflect Kremlin thinking, although they do often push anti-Western and pro-Moscow rhetoric about the war in Ukraine. This often includes boasting about Russia's nuclear capabilities, which appears to be somewhat the retired Russian admiral has done following Hegseth's comments. The segment on the 60 Minutes program expressed the uncertainty Moscow has in responding to the prospect of Tomahawk missiles being used by Ukraine and Hegseth's intentions regarding American military strength. What to know? In the clip, guests discussed the significance of the U.S. considering supplying Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles as announced by Vice President J.D. Vance, as well as comments by retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg that President Donald Trump had authorized Ukraine to carry out long-range strikes with U.S.-made weapons. Kellogg serves as Trump's special envoy for Ukraine. So apparently Hegseth is directing this, reading between the lines. And the hot topic of the week is Russia. Is telling his admirals and generals to prepare for war with Russia. And that's what we've been waiting on, man. We've been waiting for the United States to get ready to go to war. Make it fully declared to go to war with Russia. That just signals that we're almost out of here, man. This place is nearly done. America, Babylon, this Western lifestyle, the NATO, EU, the EU, NATO, they're all about to be demolished, man. Us, the so-called Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans, the captives are about to be set free. The ones who are actually sighing and crying, tired of being in these crappy bodies, tired of being on the bottom, tired of having to work, tired of being wicked, it doesn't work for the nation of Israel, man. So we want to be back in our own land with our own law, statute, commandments, ruling. And this war is going to be a big trigger, to get that ball rolling. Because, once they finally declare that war, if it ain't already happened then, but the economic collapse is not far behind. Jacob's trouble, civil war, race war, all that is all in the pot, all on the stove, I should say, cooking, man. All these irons are in the fire and just need something to trigger it. So we all close to all hell breaking loose. And you people being completely, utterly demolished, man. If you don't have Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai on your side, a great majority of y'all is not going to make it to the missiles, man. It's a great number of you Babylonians are not even going to make it to the missiles. You so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Americans here in America who are part of the 2/3 All of y'all are going to die here in America. Every single last one of you. You know? I'm talking about man, woman, child, and everything in between, man. You're not gonna make it. You know, and that's just what it is. That's how the Most High has it set up, man. So, you know, Lord willing, I'm of the elect of the 1/3 of the nation of Israel, and make it through the fire, man. You know, and get delivered by the chariots if I make it that far. You know, who knows? But one thing I do know that we're in the last days. These are the latter days spoken about in the Bible. We're at the very end of the latter days, man. There's no more hiding it. There's no more denying it. You know? We are here. Let's get some precepts. So Jeremiah 30 and verse 5. Thus says Yahweh, we have heard a voice of trembling, of fear, and not of peace. Yeah, there's no more peace talk. You got countries in Europe doing exercises, gearing up for war. You got United States sending aircraft tank refuelers to Europe. You got the U.S. talking about prepare for war. You know, all these things are coming into place, man, because there's no more peace talk. You know, the left is upset with the right's upset with the left in politics. You know, race wars are brewing. You know, people are all time so-called racist on on these comment sections. You know, so there's no more peace in the earth, man. You know, there's even talk about China getting ready to invade Taiwan. So there's no more peace, man. It's all war. And you people are going to see the carnage, the mayhem, and the chaos in this World War III, man. It's going to be World War III finally declared soon, man. And there's nothing you can do about it, man. You know, it's going to be declared. You can't petition your local politicians saying, hey, we don't want to fight these wars, these endless wars, these useless wars. It don't matter, man. This is all planned by the Most High, Yahweh Shem Yahushua. And nothing can sway prophecy, man. Prophecy must be fulfilled. Let's go to Ecclesiastes 3. And we're going to get straight to the point. Well, let's read verse 1. It's Ecclesiastes 3:1. To everything there's a season and a time to every purpose under the sun. There was a time for peace. You know, it was a time to enjoy life. You know, when you was ignorant, thinking you was enjoying life before the truth. You know, people in the 50s and 60s and 70s, you know, 80s, you know, it was a time to be, you know, joyful. It wasn't really that many wars going on. You know, that was a time, you know, where Edom was, you know, living real good, man. You know, us so-called Negro Latinos, Native Americans, you know, been effed up ever since them Edomites came here, you know, and brought Jake, the Southern Kingdom, over here, beginning in 1619. But for these Edomites, man, they've had it good. Even through World War One, World War Two, the Civil War, them crackers still fared good, man. But now, all that's going away. This is gonna hit every devil now, man. This World War III is gonna hit the rich and the poor, And that season of peace and prosperity is totally declining, man. It's over with. The world's getting ready to go to a chaos, war, war phase or war season. It's finally getting ready to spread to the west. It's been in the east for the longest. Ukraine, Russia. But it's finally about to hit over here, man, in America. America's been, doing all they dirt overseas, but eventually that World War III is going to end up over here on the shores of America via thermonuclear ICBM missiles, man. They're not going to go away unscathed, man. Let's go to verse 8. A time to love. Yeah, that whole 70s thing was like love, peace, and love. That's gone. That time to hate. We're in that time of hating right now. Like I said, man, you got the race talk, the left, the right, Republican, Democrat, hate each other. You got the Northern Kingdom, the so-called Latinos, hate the Edomites, the so-called white people, for rounding them up. Not because they hate them because they're the damn devil. They hate them because they being rounded up, Because we all know the Northern Kingdom. Majority of them love the so-called white man, And so does the Southern Kingdom, the so-called Negroes. But the Southern Kingdom, they've waking up to this bullshit of Esau, Edom, man. And they like, hold on. F this devil, man. It says, a time of war. Yeah, it's a time of war. Babylon, the military force behind this man's power structure. This is the military might of, Esau, Edom. He's saying prepare for war. Some people might be looking at it like, oh, he putting those words lightly. No, but this is the military force, Babylon military force, aka America, that pretty much governs the world, man. It's a big contender, and whatever America says, pretty much, it goes throughout the earth. And so he's telling his men, prepare for war. Now, did he say with who? No. But these generals and admirals know, they going to get their orders secretly, on who to prepare for war for and who with, But right now, get your men together is what these devils are saying. Get the troops together, assemble, because you about to get geared up and go to war, man. It says, in a time of peace, there's going to be peace after this war. Right now, there's no peace as long as Esau, Edom is in rulership. The time of peace is coming when Yahweh Shah come back on those so-called UFOs, crack them clouds, deliver his elect. The nukes get shot off, and after the dust is settled, because it says we're going to be up there, Lord willing, I'm at that number. in them so-called UFOs for a moment. And then once that moment comes over, once it's over, hey, it's nothing but peace then, man. It's going to be nothing but peace. Because we're going to go round up the heathens, go get our people together, the so-called Negro Latinos or Native Americans, wherever they are. We're going to tell them, hey, Yahweh Shah is here. Our true king, our true ruler, our power, the son of our power, he's here. And either you're going to get down or you're going to lay down. And it's just that simple. You're going to get down or you're going to lay down. But hey, man. And a lot of you so-called Negro Latinos or Native Americans, man, you young ones, you're gonna get drafted. Because this man is saying prepare for war. Hey, war is in this man's heart. And Esau Edom is starting to show his horns and his fangs, man, on who he truly is. And you tribes that's outside of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, you're not part of 1/3 in America. You about to get fucked over, man. But hey, man, I can't say you ain't been warned. So you can't cry about you ain't been warned. Nobody told you. You seen the videos. I seen a brother out on the highways and byways preaching. So hey, you get it right in the kingdom, Jake. Before I get out of here, I'm gonna give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Shalom.